Hi guys, welcome to the very first episode of Characters of Batman. The first character that we are doing is going to be the big guy, of course, himself, Bruce Wayne. And I have the best guest in the entire world on. He is fresh off his Justice Con fame, where he read out his amazing Jessica Cruz screenplay. You guys should definitely check it out. It was amazing. He's a credit to this fandom, he is a credit to his family, and he's a credit to me for being my friend. It was an amazing interview. He gave up so much of his time twice, and I'm so thankful. I really hope you guys enjoy it. Yeah, here we go.
Hi!
Hey!
Can you hear me?
I can hear you. I can hear
Oh my
you
God,
just
thank God. Oh my God. This has been the most complicated thing I've ever done in my entire life. I really think that I'm just postponing the inevitable of getting a new laptop at this point, to be honest with you.
Yeah. A more superstitious person than I would say that the universe is trying to keep this from happening, which
but we are pushing through.
actually
We are getting it.
we defy
yeah.
the astrological signs.
Exactly. We can't. We won't let anything hold us down at this point. You know?
You know it. You know it.
So just for everyone out there watching, because this will be going on YouTube finally, eventually, we have done this already.
We had a nice little dress rehearsal for this whole thing.
We had a dress rehearsal, we had schedule conflict, and then my audio stopped working, like I'd say maybe 30 minutes before we started this. And I was like, I am going to jump off a cliff. Like, literally, this isn't even funny. But we're here now. We're ready to go. Everything is good.
We're good.
We are good. We are ready. And so today we're going to talk about Batman again. But, then again, who can talk about Batman more than you and I?
Can you talk about him enough, like, honestly?
Exactly. He deserves the praise. So anyway, this is the first episode of Batman, Characters of Batman. It was a series that I decided to set up because even though I'm a big fan of Batman, he's not my favorite out of the trilogy. He'd definitely be my least favorite out of the trilogy. And I much prefer his supporting characters. So I really wanted to dive deep into, his supporting characters, what they mean to a lot of people and all that type of thing. But there wouldn't be any supporting characters without the big man himself. So I said, we have to start with him. And I said, who better to talk about it than with you? Because I know you're a big Batman fan.
I am.
I said, I'm not great at this whole YouTube thing, as you can tell. So I needed someone who I knew I could bounce off and I could chat with easily. And I knew that you would be the best person to do it with. So again, thank you so much for doing it twice.
Absolutely.
So we'll just jump right in because we've been waiting a while. So yeah, basically I want to know, where was your first, memory of Batman? When what can you remember as the first thing where you saw the character and you said, God, this character is going to mean a lot to me. It's going to be important to me.
Right. So I want to say I was somewhere around 6 or 7. Because I'm sure before that I was exposed, but it didn't really sink in. I was like, this is an important character because every time you're a kid, your parents stress you. It's like, let's stress them all this Batman stuff and everything, and it's like, so it's always kind of exposed, but it's not sunken in. But I remember when I was about 6 or 7, somewhere around there, was when my grandmother showed me the original Burton Batman film with Michael Keaton. You're just kind of watching, you're just kind of taken back by this kind of gothic atmosphere and how that movie uses the shadows and everything in this character, and you kind of get an idea and all this stuff. And I was like, what an interesting character to follow, and then through that you see this kind of larger world that they build out of him. And it's like, I want to look more into this. My 6-year-old self was like, I need to do a little bit more investigation into this whole character. So I think I asked everyone in my family. I was like, all right, what Batman stuff can you get me? I don't care what it is, just get it to me. I want to read it. I want to watch it. I want to, just kind of dive into all that. So, and I honestly couldn't tell you what the single issues were that that they gave me when I was a kid. I just remember reading them, being like, "Oh, how interesting!" Being caught by all the artwork and everything. And then you get older and you keep watching, It's just so the Burton film, and then kind of jumping off of that, I got a lot of different single issues, and I was like, "All right, this is definitely something." And then you grow up a little bit, and you get into like the tween years, like the 10 to 15 years, and I think that was when it all really kind of sunk in, because that was when Batman Begins came out, which was the first Batman movie I saw in theaters, and that was a whole experience. So I think, honestly, from like when I was 10 to now was when it kind of like really hit. That's when I kind of absorbed all the media.
Yeah, I think that's understandable. Like when you were saying, like it's so hard to tell which like Batman comic is your first one, because it's always going to be like a single issue in like a run that like you don't remember. You know what I mean? Like it's never going to be a standout one because it's so huge and the stories are so long. But it, going back to like them days of like the early days of Batman, or no, even the tween times as well. Was there any particular comics that you really have clung to over the years, and what is your favorite one?
Yeah, I want to say the first one that I read, like the first like full storyline that I read was I think it was Nightfall. Yeah, I think Nightfall was the first one that I read all the way through. I think that's a really good kind of jumping in and seeing like that really gives you an idea of the full grasp of like all these different supports and villains and everything involved in kind of the Batman ethos there. But the one that's my favorite, the one that I kind of hold the dearest, is definitely Hush. Big Hush fan. It's number one.
Me and you both. We both know Hush is my favorite as well. It's so good and it's so underrated. I mean, it's never on the list of like
never on the list
ever.
And now people who might have wanted to read it, who don't know any better, probably saw the animated film and have steered even further away from it, and just wish you could convince them. It's like, no, that's not accurate.
I know it's like it's happened with at least 3 or 4 classic comics now at this point, and it's just it's so infuriating to see it happen, because like it's just it's an astounding comic. I think if anyone wants to get into Batman, or they've watched Batman, they don't know where to start, I think Hush is the perfect one. It's such a wide range of not just characters but also themes, and you can really relate to Bruce in it, you know what I mean, as a character. So I just think Hush is amazing, to be honest with you. But if you could take any Batman comic and put it into a live action, would it be Hush?
Yeah, I think Hush. I think Court of Owls be another one. Probably Long Halloween. I think those are probably the 3. And I think the 3 of them, honestly, there's a way to make them kind of sympathetically work together and weave together. But I think the hard part when adapting a storyline to live action is there's a lot of beats from the comics people expect to see. But if you're just doing like a shot for shot, then people are just going to defer to the comic because the comic already did it the right way the first time. I think you have to take a lot of inspiration, but I think you have to make sure that you're telling your own story at the same time. As someone with actual film credits to his name, I can attest.
No, but it's completely true, because like all of the great Batman films have done that. They've taken from the comics, but then they have adapted in their own way. You know what I mean? Like into a way that it's relatable and great. You know what I mean? So speaking of the movies, which is your favorite?
Right. So my favorite movie with Batman as a character is BVS, but my favorite Batman solo movie is Batman Returns. So if I'm dividing it the 2 ways, because you can't call BVS a solo, it's not a Batman movie. It's a movie where Batman's like a co-lead,
Yeah.
But if we're doing like strictly solo, where Batman is the draw and the star and the complete focus, then it's Batman Returns is probably my favorite one.
Yeah. No, I think that's a good shout. I think over time, you know, when I'm reading a Batman comic, or I'm thinking about Batman anyway. In my head, I hear Kevin Conroy. I think obviously, I think a lot of people
Yeah,
do
yeah,
for many reasons. But when I'm seeing him on live action, I'm thinking of Ben Affleck.
yeah,
Are
absolutely.
you? Do you see him as the
No,
definite Batman?
100%. If you were just if Batman was based on a real life person, it would be based on Ben Affleck. You just look at him and you go, that's Bruce Wayne, that's Batman, you know. So I think 100%. I think most people, because the funny thing is that even when BVS came out in its original run, and you know there was the people were divided, to say it nicely, on it.
Yeah.
I think universally, even so, most people agreed that Ben Affleck was pretty much like spot on, like perfect, and everyone wanted to see more of him in that part, and which is why it's always going to be baffling. They managed to fumble even the one thing that was universally beloved from that movie. Like,
Yeah. No,
some
I completely
decisions.
agree. I think it's as you said, like the movie was very divisive. We can't get away from that, but I don't think anyone was divisive on Ben's performance. I think that was
No.
definitely everyone's standout moment on it. And I would argue, I think he may have given his best performance as Batman in the Snyder Cut in the last
Oh
scene
yeah.
with Jared
No,
Leto.
100%. It is funny that he's managed to be, I think, the first live action Batman who's actually had an arc, and yet he's not really he doesn't have a solo film to add to that arc. It's really just two movies where he's part of an ensemble, so to speak. But I'd argue that, because I don't think, and I've thought about this a lot, but I really don't think Bale's Batman really had an arc. I think he kind of
Yeah.
became Batman and then was Batman, and things happened to him, but I don't think like there was ever really any change of character so much in him in those movies. I would argue. Some people would disagree.
I would agree. I would actually really agree. I don't think time has been kind to Bale's Batman. I think, and especially,
and like, it's not that it's a bad performance, because it's well acted. I just think it's not accurately written for Batman, if that makes sense.
completely. Yeah, no, I completely agree. I think, I think he was given. I think he acted well while he was given, and I think
Yeah.
Nolan obviously did a brilliant job. But I think the weakest part of them movies was Batman in all of them.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
And it's a shame, but it's also the fact that with those movies, Batman Begins maybe not so much, but definitely the two Dark Knight films, is that they're like phenomenal crime thrillers with Batman characters in them, but it's hard to call them really like a Batman movie, if that makes sense, because it just has a different feel. It definitely feels more heat than it does like anything Batman specific. Begins, I think, was a lot closer to an actual Batman kind of feel to a movie, and that's why Begins is the one that, for me, I think I've watched the most of the Nolan trilogy.
Yeah, I would actually agree. I think this is going to sound weird, because from what we came from with Batman, Batman was very, I don't want to say campy, but it got campy towards, the 90s, in the 90s, especially even in comics it did. So when I say that the Nolan Batman movies, I feel like are very loosely based on the comics. Like they don't have a comic.
Yeah.
Like when I watch them, I say, "Oh, a great movie," but I don't associate them with Batman comics, unfortunately, because I think that's what he was going for. I just don't think it really reached it. You know what I mean? I think as time has gone on, and unfortunately for them, I think with Zack's movies and Ben's performance, they've been so rooted in the comics that now we look back on like comic book fans would look back on the movies and go, there's just something about it that just doesn't click.
I think there are movies that are very obviously easy to appreciate from a filmmaking standpoint because they're incredibly made movies, and you watch them like that and you go, yeah, these are great. And that's why they because standard film critics could watch them and say, all right, these are comic characters, but this is Heat, or this is something like this, you know. So I can kind of get into this a little bit more. You start adding the kind of comic book elements into it, and that's when a lot of people kind of check out, so to speak. But that's the stuff that we as fans kind of really want to see, you know. And I think, but when you make a movie like that, but you don't make it like a self-aware thing, like the MCU has kind of done a lot. Not to throw shade, because I do like a lot of MCU movies, but the fact of the matter is that they did that whole process of like kind of winking and doing like, oh, look at this little superhero stuff we're doing. So it's, I don't want to say they're apologetic, but they're just making sure that the audience is like, yeah, this is a comic book movie.
Yeah.
So
The characters in it.
Oh yeah, this is silly, but
yeah,
you make a comic book movie that takes itself seriously in that kind of aspect, but still does that kind of not outlandish, kind of big comic book stuff. Then that's when people steer away, and that's why movies like BVS and Man of Steel were so divisive, is because he did all the comic book stuff, but he didn't kind of try to undermine it with a lot of winking and looking at the camera kind of stuff.
I honestly couldn't agree more. I mean, I think ironically, a lot of people try, you know, of course the MCU and DCU are going to get compared. It's just the way it is. Do you know what I mean? It's just life, and we just I think people who accept it live a better life, to be honest with you.
Absolutely.
But also, I think ironically, you know, I think the DCEU, well, the Snyderverse more so, you know, as you said, when they're not winking and they're not laughing at the situation. Again, no disrespect to the MCU, they do a great job at what they do, but I think ironically, you know, Zack's movies are more based in reality than the other ones, which is crazy because a lot of people say, oh, you know, I love Marvel because they're real people in real situations, and they're, you know, they're not Superman, they can't just fly into, you know, the air or whatever. But then they look at the DC universe and they say, oh, I really love Batman because he's a real character, he's a real person, he's not, you know, a Kryptonian, he's not from Themyscira. But at the same time, when you try and pull Batman into that world, as you said, a lot of people check out because they can't see, like, to me that world needs a Batman, because they need a real person there, you know, like Clark Kent needs Bruce Wayne because he needs to remember that he's Clark Kent, you know what I mean, that type of way. But I think a lot of people check out unless they have that said to them, you know what I mean? You know what I'm trying to say?
Absolutely. And that's the thing that that Zack's Justice League really got, was the importance of having Batman there, even though, like, even, you know, Kim kind of in that movie would look around and be like, yeah, these are all gods and like grand figures, and I'm a man. But it's Batman, it's like you said, it's Batman's humanity, and it's his ability to bring that team together and actually develop a plan and figure out a way to relate all these people together. That's really his strongest aspect and what he brings to the team the most. So he's the one with the plan, he's the one with the ideas, he's the one who really relates to everyone on the team. So
yeah, I completely agree.
Perfectly.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think you're so right.
And you see that the funny thing is oh, I'm sorry to interrupt you.
No, continue. Okay.
Funny thing is that, like we were talking about, the people who look at it and check out and be like, Batman has no place here. Well, that's exactly what they did in the 2017 movie, was kind of approach Batman from that aspect. Exactly. So you watch it and you go, wow, he has no place here. Like, worthless, made him a worse Hawkeye.
And that's the thing, it made it worse. Making Batman be winky and be, I don't belong here, blah blah blah.
Like, I don't know how long I can do that. Like,
exactly.
Why would we watch that?
Why is he even here? Like, there's no reason for him to be here. He needs to be. I think it was great from Zack, actually. You know, like I know we're talking about Justice League, but we have to. I mean, come on. But I think it was great. At the time, I wasn't sure if I was mad about making Batman the leader of the Justice League, because in previous renditions, it's really always been Superman. You know, he's been the forefront because he's warm, people love him, blah blah blah. In the comics and in the animated series and stuff, Batman recognizes that he's not very trustworthy and people aren't
Yeah.
rushing to trust him, but they would to Superman. But in this world, I think putting Bruce at the forefront and making him the leader has just added another element to it that's just so interesting
Yeah.
because he is such a great leader. And even though he likes to lead from, the shadows and kind of behind,
Yeah.
Bruce Wayne's leadership skills are just so amazing that I think it's so interesting to see him now step up and really just go for it and just be pushed forward.
Yep. And it's the small things in that movie they did with him that really builds that feeling. Like the moment before they're going to fight Steppenwolf before the third act, and they're flying up to the Flying Fox, and he's like, he's talking to Cyborg, and he's like, you got to fly. He goes, why is its nature? It's yours too. It's like just little things like that that are just so good to see, and kind of makes you understand why people would look at this Batman as a leader. And also, if we're going off the original plans that Zack had for these movies, people were still going to get what they wanted in the end, because the Justice League trilogy was going to be about Superman kind of reaching that arc to become the leader of the League himself. So it's kind of everyone was going to get what they wanted if they just trusted the process on it,
Oh, completely. I mean, and also I think, as you're right, like Superman fans would have gotten what they wanted. He would have stepped forward and been the leader, but also they would have shown so clearly how he couldn't have done it without Bruce.
Absolutely.
And that's the truth. You know what I mean? They need each other. That relationship, they need each other, like in their lives. That's why they're so close in the comics. It's why they strive off each other in the same universe. It's because they need each other. And I think personally, I'm kind of skipping ahead here, but I think personally, I'm kind of sick of seeing Batman by himself. I kind of want to see him interact with other people. You know what I mean? I want to see him interact with Wonder Woman, with Superman, with Robins, with Batgirl.
Yeah.
I want to see him interact with other
and
characters.
That's the thing I think that have made the Nolan films kind of age not the best from this aspect, is because he really treated Batman as someone who is just Batman and Alfred really for those movies. So there is no real acknowledgement of like a grander group aside from Alfred and Gordon to an extent.
Yeah, I agree.
I'm pretty sure Nolan I'm pretty sure Nolan spoke out and said he had like no respect for Robin as a character, like completely at some point.
Yeah. I remember people were asking him like, would you ever, or they asked Gary Oldman had he heard of Barbara Gordon, or it was his daughter in the movie Barbara Gordon, and he had no idea who Barbara Gordon was, like absolutely no idea, which is fine.
Like he had a son in those movies, so he didn't have a daughter in the Nolan movies, so Nolan made sure there was going to be did he have a daughter?
But she was very much in the background the whole time.
Yeah, that would show it. Yeah. They made more of a deal with the son with the heart situation.
But I remember they asked Gary Oldman, they were like, is your daughter, Barbara Gordon or whatever? And he was like, what? And they were like, oh, well, Barbara Gordon she grows up to be that girl, you know what I mean? And he was like, oh no, Nolan really wants this to be in the real world.
Yeah.
And it was just that kind of like, it wasn't disrespect, of course, because he just looked at it in a different way, but it's like, it doesn't have to be unrealistic for them to know other characters in the universe. Yeah. You know what I mean? And it's something that I really hope that Matt Reeves can do. Okay, because, I think there is potential for Matt Reeves to fall into the same trap as Nolan did a little bit and kind of distance himself from that world. But I really hope he leans into it. I really hope he goes full on in, because I think,
get a feeling Matt Reeves is definitely going to walk a very tight line between going like full, like going Nolan and going like real comic booky. He's going to put a lot of elements from both, while obviously doing his own thing too. Yeah. But I think there is a very strong possibility that we could see a Barbara Gordon in these movies. Now, if we see her as Batgirl, that's like, who knows if that'll happen. But I think we would see a Barbara Gordon and maybe an Oracle role in this movie if we were going to see anything. I could see him doing an Oracle in his movies and making that work.
I think so too. I yeah, I think it's kind of inevitable. I mean, we haven't even seen the first movie, so we don't know. But I think he will definitely have a Robin at
I
some stage.
don't know if we'll get a Robin just because this Batman is already so young that I
Well,
don't
yes,
know.
that is true.
That'll be the only thing. I think maybe if we get a Robin, it would be in like a part 3, maybe. But
Yeah.
I don't think we get any hints of a Robin in this one. I would say
No,
probably
I
not.
don't. Yeah, I don't think it's. I definitely don't think it's going to be the first one.
Yeah.
But I think. I mean, I'm hoping, I'm praying that there will be one. You know what I mean? Because
Mhm.
I'm dying for a live action Dick Grayson that's, mature and with a
Yeah.
great director. Like, I mean, with Nolan, Snyder, or Reeves, they're all amazing directors, and I would have loved to have seen their take on that type of thing. Um, so I'm really looking forward to that. But are you happy with the casting? Are you excited for Rob Pattinson?
Yeah, no, I am very excited. I took him like they announced it, and I was like, let me think about this for like a second because I just had to make
Yeah,
sure. And I'm, you know what? Like he is a really great actor. I love Good Time. I really enjoyed him in The Lighthouse. So I think he is a very great actor. So I think he's going to be good. What I like about his Batman that I think is the direction they're going to go is I think they're going to treat it from almost like an addict standpoint, where like he's so needs the persona of Batman that he's losing all of the Bruce Wayne in himself at this point because he doesn't know how to walk that line. Like he just like it's I think if they approach it from that standpoint, I think Pattinson is really perfect for a Batman like that because
mm,
he seems like completely like not even able to fake it being Bruce Wayne from what we've seen from the little bits that we've seen of the movie. And if that's the way they go, where he's just a miserable Bruce Wayne, he just doesn't even like to pretend to be a playboy or anything like that, I think that can be very, very interesting. And I'd like that route to see it if they go in that direction.
yeah. I think that I've never really thought of it from that standpoint, but I think that's a really great idea. I think, yeah, I think that type brooding, grief-stricken Batman will be perfect for Robert Pattinson. I think he will really nail it. Is there
Absolutely.
anything? Is there anything else specific that you would like to see from that movie? Even just like fanfare.
Yeah, no, what I like that I'm seeing from that movie is something that I've always liked when I think of Batman, and something that kind of got hijacked at some point and changed into something else. Is I don't think Batman has any actual trust in the GCPD, like
Yes.
at all. I think he sees them all as corrupt and just not helpful and perpetuating the kind of problems that have existed in Gotham since he was a kid. But when he looks at Gordon, he sees kind of the idealized version of what the police should be. And so I like that
Mhm.
idea of him being kind of against the GCPD, but seeing Gordon as somebody who wants the same things he does and they can actually help each other. So them going in that direction and kind of doing it that way is something that has me really interested. And I hope that's the way they go.
Yeah, yeah. I think I'm hoping with the show that they can really delve into that as well,
Yeah.
because I think it's a story that we haven't really properly looked into, and there's so much potential for it. I just think it's brilliant. I completely agree with you.
I can't remember if they cast Harvey Bullock in the movie or not. I don't think they did. But if they did,
Mm,
then I could
I'm
see
not
him
even sure.
making him making an appearance in the show if he's not in the movie. But I
Yeah,
think if you're trying to create that kind of dichotomy, then you need to have a Harvey to offset a Gordon and kind of show
yeah,
the difference in how they both work in Gotham.
yeah. Completely, completely. I think. Oh, I'm just thinking about that potential. It's so good if they get this
No,
right.
absolutely.
It's going to be brilliant. It's going to be so good.
I'm
But
really excited.
obviously, in a perfect world, we will be getting this Batman, Robert Pattinson, but we would also be continuing with Ben as well.
Uh,
Now, he is coming back for the Flash. Maybe, who knows? No one really knows
yeah,
what's going on with that movie. Um,
I just
no one really
the
knows.
world would be a better place if we could all just be unapologetically excited for the first Flash movie that has Ben Affleck coming back as Batman, but it's a lot of really gross behind the scenes stuff that kind of tainted that movie, with none of it falling on Andy Muschietti.
No.
You know, he's an unfortunate hostage in the whole situation, which is why you feel bad, because everyone who's actually making the movie, you want them to do everything right.
Mm-hmm.
But it's just a few people behind the scenes that have just kind of tarnished that whole process.
I mean, it's nothing that, unfortunately, that we aren't used to. You know,
It's true.
A cast that we love, you know, a director that we really appreciate and we want to see do well. But, you know, cast by behind the scenes just crap that we just don't want involved. So you're right. It's so hard. Like, me personally, I mean, I never thought the day would come where I wasn't excited for a movie with Ben Affleck as Batman in it. But I'm just, you know, I can't. It's difficult. But look, hopefully things straighten out. Hopefully things get better. You know what I mean? But yeah,
we have Fandom Part 2 in October. Who knows? They could completely do a 180 and make us all happy again and announce some good things. There could be some shaking up that goes on in the boardroom. Who knows? But
I mean, look, anything is possible at this point. I will never say nothing is
we've
possible.
learned if
The
last 2 years have taught us anything, it's that literally anything is possible.
Exactly. Literally anything is possible. If anything was possible and we could write whatever we wanted to, what would you do with the Batman show, with Ben Affleck's Batman show? What direction would you want to see it being taken in? Who would you want to see it? Would you want to see Jared in it? I'm guessing you want to see Joe in it. Would you like to see Batgirl in it, or would you like to save that for later? What direction would you want to go if you were in charge?
Right.
Of Ben?
If they're doing it as a show, as a mini series, so like 6 hour-long episodes, probably, then if that's the direction they go, then that means the show is what we're gonna get. And I don't think there will be like a season 2. So if they're going the show standpoint, then put everything in it. I'd like to see them put a lot of elements of Arkham Serious House on Serious Earth, because I think that dynamic between Ben and Jared would be really great to follow. And I love anything that kind of digs into like the deep psychological issues that Bruce Wayne has, and digging those out of him and putting him in a position where he's just surrounded by, you know, his rogues gallery. So I think incorporating that for maybe a 2-episode bit in it, finding a way to put that in there somewhere, I think would be really, really, really good. When I heard that Barbara as Batgirl was going to be a featured part of the show, like a definite main factor in the 3rd act, I definitely want to see that. I want to see her and Batfleck teaming up on Deathstroke. I'd like to see a lot of League of Shadows stuff, be it a flashback or him going back to the League once he gets defeated by Deathstroke, to kind of, you know, figure out who he is and do all the work and kind of reintegrate himself to a bit with the League of Shadows would be really, really cool to follow. That's the big stuff that I'd like to see. I really want to see Arkham Serious House on Serious Earth brought to live action in some way at some point. That's one of my favorites. That's like right after Hush, probably, honestly.
No, I think that would be amazing. I really do. I think so much potential. But fingers crossed. I mean, never say never for anything, you know what I mean? But and then so we have that, you know, that show, hopefully, and then we will continue hopefully into Justice League 2, Justice League 3. Anything in particular you'd like to see there in regards to Batman?
Well, the thing I want to see the most that Zach talked about before, which I think would have come in part 3, if I'm not mistaken, is that Last Supper that the Nightmare League was going to have before they go to take. And there was going to be that scene of him and Jared both telling their versions of the death of Robin with those kind of the flashbacks and everything. And that whole sequence sounded just like unbelievable. And I really want to see that. I don't know if Zach could ever make that as just like a short film, but if he could, I would watch that every day of my life.
I mean, there was rumors about it maybe coming as a comic, which obviously isn't all we want. But
So
I know.
like,
I mean,
we're just trying to figure out, like, they don't want it in the movie. They don't want it told at all, I guess, or something. But like, they wouldn't even let him do that
yeah.
as a comic or anything. So
I mean, the
who knows?
audience that's going to see their movies and the audience that's going to write or read their comics, I don't want to say they're really different because there is a crossover, obviously, but it's not going to affect the general audience if there's a comic
Yeah,
about it. Do you know what I mean? It's not like they're going to be like, oh, it's ruined because I have a comic about it. Do you know what I mean?
it's ridiculous. You know what's crazy about this whole thing too? That's even harder to wrap your head around is the fact that they were trying to, like, with this whole process to remove Zach.
Mm.
They said, all right, we want to appeal to the critics and the general audience, right?
Yeah.
Well, when Zack's Justice League came out, it appealed to the critics and the general audience. And everybody, so many people just want to see more of it. So it's just hard to grasp your mind, other than the fact that it's just pride and ego that are just holding the process back, which are two things you should never have if you're in the business of trying to make money.
Of course, like literally, like I think even general people who like don't know the story of what happened and stuff like that, like people like my mom and like people like regular people like watch it and they're like, oh, like I like when's the sequel coming out? Like why wouldn't there be more? Like it's so successful, like of course there'd be more.
No.
Like
Literally
for the general audience.
One of my close friends who definitely leans Marvel texted me the day Zack's Justice League came out and was like this was like amazing. Like, I can't believe that this happened. Like, what do I have to do to see more of this? And it's like, the tweet. That's all we can do, apparently.
That's it. Like, and wait
and
for
like,
the
it's
universe.
not like anyone is sitting here saying like Toby has to be Zach's best friend and invite him to his birthday or anything. Just hey, we'll make the movie. Don't talk to me. We're good.
But exactly. But also, like, no one has ever said a bad word about Zach. Even the people who hate him. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like when they work with him, like Toby, like even in that article, only had good things to say about him because he's a good guy. You know what I mean? It's not like he's going to be incredibly hard to work with and is going to be this stubborn person. You know what I mean? He's going to make a great environment. He's going to make all the fans happy, and then he only has a 5-film arc anyway. So just finish
the
it,
fact
and then
that he would have been done with Zach's movies now if they had just not done any of this. Like, it's bizarre. I
think, you know, I'm really excited for the Batman. I'm hoping to become more excited for the Flash. But I know for a fact that if we could have finished that arc and then started with the Batman or started with the Flash, I know it would be a lot more exciting.
Everyone would have gotten what they wanted.
Exactly. Actually, do you know what? I have a question to ask because I've been having discussions about it with my friends and I want to know what you think. Because some people are on one side of the fence and some people are on like completely the other. And it's kind of off topic, but back to the Batman show, I think it was pretty clear, and I want to know what you think, that Alfred was definitely going to die in that.
Yeah. No.
Yeah.
Alfred was
you agree?
Die. Alfred,
I think
Alfred was going to die. No, there's no doubt in my mind. As soon as Joe started saying he's going to kill people closest to him, no, Alfred was going to die in that show, and it was going to be, or that movie. It would have been a movie at the time.
Movie, yeah.
That would have been something. But yeah.
I mean, a death scene between Alfred like Jeremy Irons Alfred and Ben Affleck's Batman, I just think would have been absolutely amazing. But do you think Gordon would have died?
Probably. Yeah, I think so.
Because I think that then ties Barbara in.
I'm thinking, I don't think either of them had much of a place in the movies going forward.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think it's safe to say that both of them probably would have died. And I think Selena Kyle would have come close to death. I think.
Oh, really?
I got a feeling Selena was going to be a big part of it, and I think she was going to come close to death. Because this is the point where Zach said that they had been in a near marriage at some point. Like, they were definitely in a close relationship, but they had gone their separate ways after Dick Grayson died.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that, they were going to be in kind of that separated, like, kind of avoiding each other thing.
Yeah.
But Deathstroke would have known about that kind of civil union between them. And I think he would have gone after her, and she would have I don't think she would have died, but I think she would have nearly died. And I think that was going to be a thing that was going to like spiral Ben's Batman a lot. And that was either going to like ramp it up going into the third act, or that was going to be like a big ramp down towards the middle of the second act. One where he's either going to spiral down or spiral up off of that. But I think I have a strong feeling that Selina was going to have a very near-death experience at some point in that movie.
Oh, that would have been so cool. I never thought about that, actually. Except Selina, for some reason, she's like just often this, because we haven't seen any of that. You know what I mean? It's just so like, it's just so unattainable almost. You know what I mean? To even think about that, but that would have been so good, so good. I was going to ask you something, but now I forget. Oh yes, another thing that I want to hear your opinion on, because it has been divisive, even though it hasn't even happened yet, and I want to know your opinion on what it is. So, in the original storyboards for Justice League 2 and 3, which Zack said, have been changed. I mean, there was no Martian Manhunter in it. There was no Jared Leto's Joker. So they have been changed. They have been altered a little bit. But something that I wasn't mad about, admittedly, and I'm kind of glad that it's changed, is that Bruce was actually going to be the father of Lois's baby.
Yeah. I definitely, it's definitely something that would not have worked.
No,
but I can understand the ideas that went into it to a degree, because I think it's kind of like you ever see the movie Brothers with Jake Gyllenhaal and Tobey Maguire? It's a lot. It's kind of like that kind of feel to it.
Yeah.
Where I don't know if for all I know, that could have been inspiration. Who knows? But when I read it, that was what came in my mind. And I was like, this is an interesting idea that I think definitely has a real world parallel to it.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't think, and he ultimately agreed in the end, that that's just something that people would have wanted to see.
Yeah.
So, like, I understand the idea of like people brought together through grief and kind of at the same time working together, because Batman and Lois are going to be the ones who kind of uncovered everything that Lex is going to do. So they were going to spend most of their time working together, and that kind of. So I get like his ideas behind that, but I think, and like I said, he ultimately agreed in the end. That's just something that people wouldn't have wanted to see, because I think they Lois is with Clark Kent. That's just that. Batman with Selina or somebody else, but probably not Lois. But like I said, I get the ideas he had behind that, because I definitely can see a real world parallel. But that wouldn't have played out great in live action, probably.
No, I agree. I think it was good that they dropped it, but I agree. I think at first when I read it, I was like, oh no. But then when I thought about it for a little while, I was thinking, maybe, I mean, Chris Terrio writing, they really could have pulled something out of there.
There is something. I think, like I said, if there's anything that I've ever seen that shows that type of dynamic can work in some way, it would be that movie Brothers, probably.
Yeah. I think that's a really good shout. I think if anyone's watching this and hasn't seen that movie, they definitely should, because it's actually very good. But I think you're right. I think the whole grief and everything like that. But ultimately, I am glad that it was cut, because I think there is other ways that they could have shown that better. You know what I mean?
For sure.
But you were talking about Selina Kyle. Is she your favorite relationship with him?
Yeah. No, 100%. Yeah. I'm a Batcat purist. I love the dynamic, which is a big reason why I like Hush so much, probably.
Yeah.
Because I think it explored their relationship in probably my favorite way that's ever been tackled between them. So, I definitely like to see that done more. I think Rises did some good stuff with Bruce and Selina, but I don't like saying I wish they had more time together, but I don't know. It was just I like it, but I'd like to see it done a little differently at the same time.
Yeah.
So, but I definitely like it. So I'm glad Matt Reeves is doing that with his movie. So
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I think that's gonna be
Yeah,
good.
another thing ticked off the box.
Yeah.
How do you feel about other ones? How do you feel about, Talia or Diana? Is there any other pull to you, or are you just a pure that cast?
I've never vibed with Bruce and Diana except for in the Snyder movies. That's the only
Yeah.
time I've ever gotten into the Wonder Bed stuff, just because I like
He
Ben
can
and
make he can make
Ben
you
and
like
Gal
things that you
together.
didn't realize.
Ben and Gal together. I was like, I can get behind this.
Yeah.
Other than that, in the comics or in animated stuff, I'm like, they can go their separate ways. I don't know if they have to be
Yeah.
here, but Ben and Gal, I was like, all right, I can exclusively Ben and Gal. I'll get behind Wonder Bed, and that's the only time. Other than that, I don't. Maybe I just haven't read it done right, but I'm not a huge liker of Bruce and Talia,
Mm-hmm.
which I think is a common opinion, but
Yes.
I also
Yeah.
think it could be just done better. But yeah,
I
I'm
think
not a
there's
big.
definitely like an interesting basis there for it. Like
Yeah,
I think you could definitely dive deeper into it, but I think you're right. I don't think it's ever been done well enough for it
I
to
think it's
be.
a necessary dynamic, but I don't think it's something that anyone should ship.
No.
You know what I mean? Like, I don't think
Oh,
there
I know
should
what
be
you're saying.
Talia shippers, which I don't know if that exists completely, but if it
Yeah.
does, not a good
Yeah.
sign.
Do so do you do you want to see, I don't know where you would see this, but would you ever want to see a Damien?
I'm sorry, say that again?
Would you ever want to see a Damien win?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I'd like to see a lot of that stuff. It's hard
Yeah.
to say because it's hard for people to decide which Robins they want to see in live action.
Yeah.
Uh,
I think it
because
depends on which one. I think
yeah,
like I don't really want to see Ben with Tim Drake. Like I wouldn't really care about
right.
that. But I would like to see him with Dick and Jason. You know what I mean? But
Yeah.
then again, in the
I think
Nolanverse, maybe Tim would have worked. I don't know.
they wanted to put Carrie Kelly in those movies at some point too,
Yes,
because
he did.
Ben
Jack
and
did
Jack are
say
both
that.
big Dark Knight Returns fans.
Yeah. Would that be something that you would like?
Yeah, I would have liked to have seen Ben and Zach bring Carrie Kelly in there. I think they both would have done some good stuff with that character. I like Carrie Kelly's different from the other Robins, except
Yeah.
Damien, because he has both of his parents. But Carrie Kelly isn't like an orphan. She just has very negligent parents. So her kind of choosing to be Robin and Batman, kind of just bringing her along and seeing. I think they had a lot of really good moments in that whole comic. Actually, The Dark Knight Returns gets a bad rap, I think, for being like very, what's the word to say, aggressive.
Yeah.
Which it is, but at the same time, there's so many good bits between Batman and Carrie Kelly in that I think get overlooked a lot. Like the whole bit at the amusement park when they escape and everything, and Carrie almost falls to her death, and Batman grabs her and holds her. And he's like, good soldier, and all that stuff. And I'm like,
Yeah.
there's so many nice moments in that that still show Batman's humanity. So I've always been a big Carrie Kelly fan. I remember when Ben was making The Accountant, and a lot of people thought after that
Anna Kendrick.
yeah, she was gonna become Carrie Kelly or Barbara in those movies. So I was like, that's interesting.
Before I saw The Accountant, I would never ever have put her in either of them. But I think after I saw it and I saw that dynamic, I was like, oh, wait a minute, that could
Like she actually
definitely
kind of
work.
fits in something like this. I know, because I thought the same
Yeah.
thing when I went to see The Accountant. I was like, I don't know if I buy her in a movie like this. But I was like, you know what? Yeah, I can get behind it. It's not that I don't like her as an actress. When people are fan casting Barbara's to go along Ben's Batman, I don't. Anya Taylor-Joy, I don't get that because I think she's too young. I don't like Gordon having a daughter that young. That doesn't work for me. Barbara needs to be older.
Yes. Oh my God, I'm sorry. I've
hard
been
thing
saying
to
this
explain
for
to people.
years.
But I'm like, that wouldn't make sense. She's like
No.
20 and Gordon is like a 70-year-old man. Like, I'm sorry, that doesn't work.
Like, I think she, in my perfect world, she would have been back. I know this wasn't what they were going for, but in my perfect world, she would have been Batgirl when Dick Grayson was Robin. So they would
Yeah.
have been coinciding, and then when Dick died, she either got
absolutely.
shot or you know what I mean, or something, and then she comes back as Oracle in the Snyderverse. That's what I would have preferred. But even if they
Yeah.
weren't doing that, I mean, you're right. It makes no sense for Batman to be an old Batman and for her to be what, like 16. Like, it makes no sense. Do you know what I mean?
That doesn't work. Like,
No.
I've said so many times, that picks up so much steam every time somebody says it, and I'm like, can we just like, let's examine this for 1 second? All right, she
Yeah.
should not be a 17-year-old Batgirl. Like,
No.
no.
It just no, it wouldn't make any sense. And also, I don't think it would fit that world like at all.
No, not at all.
No, I agree. But you're the first person that I've ever heard actually say that. So I was so excited.
Yeah, well, there you go. Because we're
I feel
just
the exact same.
in sync, you and I.
That's the thing. That is the thing, isn't it? But so talking about Batman again, I know we're talking about the films a lot, but is there any bat suit that you really love?
Yeah. Well, live action, I love the BVS suit, which most people agree. I'm a big fan of the Hush suits. I really like the way that he's drawn in Arkham, even if it's not a practical looking suit. I just like the way he's drawn in Serious House on Serious Earth.
Yeah.
I love the Batman Beyond suit. I think that's just a really cool kind of future pop design, whatever. I don't like Keaton's suit from the first Batman, but from Batman Returns, I think it looks a lot better and it has a really good silhouette. Plus, it has
I agree.
Has the symbol, which is kind of, that became like the Batman symbol, was the one in Returns. Those are probably my tops right there, I would say.
Yeah, I agree. I think I always have this weird kind of feeling about a suit before we actually see it. Like when we see like a pre-picture, or like we hear rumors of like, oh, they're looking for this suit or they're going with this suit, I'm always like, I don't love that. But then when I see it, I'm like, oh wow, this is actually really good. Do you know what I mean? But I think I'm excited to see Pattinson's, and I'm also excited to see Keaton's new one, because I don't know if he's going to suit up
what type of
or
modifications they've made to that.
yeah, that's going to be interesting to see, because I don't know how much suiting up he's going to do, but I hope it's some. I hope he's not just Bruce Wayne.
Yeah, for sure. I think, I don't know if this is true at all, but I think it's been talked that at some point he's going to get the kind of Kingdom Come kind of suit, which would make sense for his Batman, I think. So I could see them putting a Kingdom Come inspiration in there at some aspect.
Yeah, it would make perfect sense.
How a different director does Tim Burton's Gotham.
Yeah.
Like how that is done in a modern, because Tim Burton's Gotham had no functionality to it at all. It was all statues and
really does.
everywhere. I was like, how does anyone even get around this city? You know what I mean?
It makes absolutely no sense whatsoever. There's like roads like going like diagonally.
Like, the architecture budget in Gotham was like $30 trillion, but the public transportation. But
also, it was a scummy city. Like
$5.
It just makes no sense. It's insane. But no, it definitely is going to be interesting to see that. I'd say it'll probably be a modern version of that, though.
Yeah, I'm really interested. That's the thing that, like, I love the idea of it, but I'm just like, I wonder how they're going to bring Burton's kind of universe and kind of update it and put it into like a modern setting, and what kind of change.
Yeah.
I wonder if Burton is involved in that at all, like if Andy has had any conversations with him or not. Yeah, that's what I'm really, because they haven't said anything about that, so I don't know. But
yeah, it feels very I wonder, are we gonna, like, I think probably with the heat that they're getting right now because of, you know, everything that's gone behind the scenes, I think they're kind of reluctant to really even say anything about it.
Yeah,
because they're afraid they're going to get heat from anything. You know what I
Literally,
mean? So I think,
because they're filming Keaton scenes like right now as we talk,
yeah.
but so who knows?
Who knows? Exactly. Who knows? But another version of Batman that, although was small, but I think really significant, and I talk about it all the time, was in Joker and that kind
Yes.
of world. It,
Yes.
I know it's mainly about, Joker, Arthur Fleck, and whatever, like, and everything like that. But I really would have loved to have seen a Batman versus that type of Joker. I think that would have been really, really interesting. And especially in that type of Gotham. I think that was probably one of the most realistic takes on Gotham that we ever got, and how it kind of shaped them.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead. What do you think?
Okay. So you know what I was thinking? Because they've talked like on and off about, I don't know if it's ever going to happen, but there were like talks of, hey, maybe we will do like a sequel to this Joker movie.
Yeah.
And I thought for a part 2, what I would like to see is bring Gordon in and him kind of starting a case on this Joker and everything, whatever they have this Joker doing, if he's building his kind of enterprise or whatever, and how they go forward with that, is having Gordon do that and then showing kind of the early days of, which I guess this is Gotham now that I'm talking about it. So Gotham already did this. So what am I really talking about here? Just watch Gotham. But if they were going to do a part 2 of it, it's the only way I could think would be to take a lot of inspiration from Gotham, I guess.
Yeah, which I don't think is a bad thing. I mean, I think Gotham.
No.
I was very 50-50 on it. I thought what it did well, it did really well, but I thought it fell a little bit at the
I need to watch it again because I don't think I gave it a fair chance when I watched it the first time.
Yeah.
I think that's when I definitely need to watch again. I'd probably like it a lot more.
Yeah, I think I'm the same. I think just that
I see so much Gotham praise on the timeline, and I'm like, maybe I just completely like missed the point. I should watch it again. I don't like.
I'm the exact same. People talk about it all the time, like it's brilliant, but at the time they weren't praising it that much.
Yeah. So, who knows?
So, I mean, who knows? But yeah, I think it's definitely something that we should go back and look at. But yeah, I think that's a really interesting take on Joker as well. I think that could be an interesting way forward. But I just think that the way that Todd Phillips did Gotham, it's really, I think, very comic accurate to see how somebody could dress up like a bat and run around in that city. Yeah. You know what I mean? I think I'd love to see more of that type of shaping. Like Gotham was almost like a character in that movie because it clearly shaped Arthur, and it would lead to shaping Bruce into that type of crazy person who would dress up like a bat and run around.
What's really cool about that, and we talked about this before, is that what's so funny about Joaquin Phoenix playing the Joker now is that years ago, like 2003 or 2002, Darren Aronofsky was going to do a year 1 adaptation that was going to have, he wanted to have Joaquin as Batman, and the studio wanted Freddie Prinze Jr. as Batman.
Both crazy picks.
Right? Like, could not be more polar opposite in what you're deciding to do. But, it's funny because I was watching I Know What You Did Last Summer recently, and I was looking at Freddie Prinze Jr., and I was like, you know what? Yeah, maybe.
Yeah, maybe.
But their Batmans would have been way different.
I think ever since Ben Affleck turned out to be like my favorite Batman of all time, now every casting I hear that's like so weird and outlandish, even though like some of them end up being really bad, I'm always like, that's really interesting. Like I could kind of see that maybe. You know what I mean? Because like everyone is going to do a different take. And I think in that particular instance, the script, the things that I've seen in the script for that Darren Aronofsky stuff was insane. Like it was mental. I don't think it would have. I think it very much would have been almost like a cult classic because it was insane.
It would have been a very divisive movie, but it would have come out at the right time where people would have been responsive to a divisive movie. Because that was at that time when people when we had comic book movies coming out, it was like Blade and Spawn and like the first X-Men movie came out then. Mm-hmm. So people weren't really at the stage where they looked at comic book movies in like a black and white, whatever. Like you got the MCU and you got this, and the MCU didn't exist back then, which was really the time when comic book movies could be really experimental.
Yeah.
So I think that's what benefited that, and that's what helped Nolan be able to make his Dark Knight movies at the same time. Because by the time the Dark Knight came out, that was the year that Iron Man came out.
Yeah.
So the MCU wasn't really born yet. So he was able to convince them to let him do his movies. But I think if he had started with Begins in 2008 and had not done the Begins before, that I don't think the Nolan trilogy would have been a trilogy. Because I don't think he would have. I don't think he would have. Because if he had started with Begins in 2008, when Iron Man came out, because Begins wasn't like a box office like phenomenon. It did good. It did good, but it didn't do like amazing. But it did good enough where they're like, all right, we can do more of this, because there was nothing to really compare it to at the time.
Yeah.
But if he had started with that in 2008 when they made Iron Man, then they made like Captain America and everything after that, I think the studio would have been a little more suggestive in what Nolan would have done.
Yeah.
And, and as to where Zach definitely took suggestions and but also did his own thing. Nolan wouldn't have even taken a suggestion to begin with. So I think he would have walked if they had done it that way. So I think it's really interesting to think that his movies came out at the exact right time where he could have done that.
I think, do you know what? Now that you're saying it, I think I always look back at that time, 2002, 2003 of comic book movies as like, oh, well, they hadn't found their footing yet. They didn't know what they were doing yet. But now that you say it, I mean, they were just much more able to be free, and they didn't have limitations on them. You know what I mean? And like
they can make like movies like The Crow, and they can make like Blade, and like all those, just kind of these different kind of darker and more like gothic alternative kind of comics. And they could just be out, they just make them, and now everything has to set up something else and this and that, and it's just kind of everyone's looking for a franchise rather than just kind of doing their own. And granted, Zach was making a franchise, but he was also giving them all definitely their own independent kind of feels to them.
Yeah.
So
this isn't really a question that I thought I was going to ask, and it might be a bit off topic, but I've been thinking about it a lot the past couple of weeks. Are you worried about the direction that they're going in? I mean, I know you probably are, but my worry is that I don't think we're going to get to see that type of movie again for a very long time. My worry is that,
if
the Jokers are done.
If we get it at all, and that type of feel, it's going to be some more independent type of comic, and it's going to be on a streaming site, and that's the only way we're going to get anything like that. But in terms of like getting that into like a theatrical setting, I am concerned that we might not. And I think honestly the last one we might have gotten that had a different kind of feel to it was probably Birds of Prey.
Yeah.
Honestly, I think that might be the last one that we get that actually has that kind of like a director doing their own thing and not doing like a studio film, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, it does. It makes sense. I'm very worried. I'm really nervous of it. I mean, I think
it's just a shame. It's just a shame because when you look back, like I said, beyond Zach, we had Rick Famuyiwa was about to make a Flash movie that was going to deal with themes that were only become more and more and more relevant. So the movie was just going to gain relevance, the longer it had been out, and they just panicked and jumped ship when they could have been at the forefront of something like that,
Completely. I mean, I think that as well. I think it's so ironic that BVS came out the year that it did. You know what I mean? I think like it was telling people a story that they didn't. It's almost like they didn't want to hear it. You know what I mean? And then all of a sudden they looked around like that year or later on, and they realize like that is actually the world that they're living in. You know what I mean? I think it probably would have benefited from being maybe out of it later.
Yep. That's the funniest thing is that people are looking back since Zack's Justice League came out, and now everyone's looking back at BVS and being like, you know what? This was a really good movie. Maybe I just listened to the wrong
like
people.
this movie now. What?
Yeah, it's like it's crazy. It's like, gee, if only you had just formed your own opinion when you watched it,
Yeah,
rather than
exactly.
listening to a couple of people online. You know?
Completely. I mean, it's sickening. I mean, I think, yeah, it's hard to think about, but I mean, I guess we just have to keep pushing for it. You know what I mean? Because this is, I think, of
Yep.
all characters in this world, the one who needs that dark, well, not even dark, but gritty realism
Yeah.
is Batman himself.
And what's great about it is that they don't act like this is how he's always been.
Yeah.
There was the more traditional version of Batman that existed before the death of Dick Grayson and everything that happened, and then seeing Superman come in while he's already grieving and broken from the death of Dick Grayson, and seeing something that he's now like fearful and intimidated by would push him even further to the edge. So, and then Justice League is all about him coming back to that. So the idea that like he's just this like unsympathetic killer Batman and that's what he's always been is wrong. Like everything people felt when they watched BVS is what they were supposed to feel because it's from the lens of the audience and the bystander.
Yeah.
And so Alfred is telling him that. Everyone's telling him that. So like it's a very known thing in this universe that he's behaving differently because he's just come. And seeing a Batman that's actually come that close to the edge and almost losing himself to that is such an interesting and good thing. And I like the fact that Zack wants his characters to earn back their kind of traditional morals and notions and everything. So having Henry go through his arc of becoming like the world inspirational Superman and kind of his whole process, dying and being brought back to life, and his second chance kind of being the thing that helps inspire him and see that he can make a difference and he does matter. And so he can kind of step out a little bit more and be that. Seeing the impact he made even in his death and everything. So having him kind of come back to the traditional Superman again and seeing Gal step out of the shadows again and be Wonder Woman and be helping and saving people again and those kind of things. So seeing all of that, the journey that he was going to take Aquaman on and having all this stuff, and then Cyborg's arc being the core of the movie. I like the idea that he makes his characters earn who they're going to be rather than them just starting out that way, because that's such a boring way to do a narrative, is just have somebody be one way and just be that way and have things happen around them,
Yeah. Oh, completely. I completely agree. I don't really know what it is about nowadays, but I feel like it's almost like an attack on creativism where people just, they can't see other.
Because what's really crazy to tell people is that the first Iron Man wouldn't even exist today.
No, it really wouldn't. It
really wouldn't. That movie, that was the first one, so we got to do a lot more. But the way that movie was made, it would not look that way at all if they made it just 10 years later.
Oh, I completely agree. It's like they dug their own hole almost. And now they're, we're in this. It's hard to describe, the feelings around it. But I think every DC fan and somebody who's passionate about this knows it. You know what I mean? We don't need to tell them. It's almost painful to watch. But I mean, I don't think there's anything more realistic than what you just said. Somebody earning who their person was 5 years ago. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You earn who you are. You become who you are. You don't start out as a adult. You know what I mean? That's
And you
not
know what?
realistic.
It doesn't even like make sense for people who tried to act like that, like people who look at that and be like, "Those Batman's just a killer." Because if he had started out that way, do you really think Gordon would have like worked with him all this time? Like, probably
Exactly.
not. You know what I
Yeah,
mean? Like, there
exactly.
would have been an effort to actually bring him down at some point or something. You know, I
Yeah,
don't think Alfred would have just willfully stood by his side for 20 years while he murdered people. You
exactly.
know what I mean?
Exactly. Like
Like, that's not the thing. And
it's
like
just
and
common
like I
sense.
said, the justification that I think that Alfred had for not abandoning him at the time was that you can argue that the death that happens at Batman's hands in BVS is a result of
Mm.
collateral damage, and while he's not
Yeah,
directly killing people, he's not actively trying to like avoid
not
death.
kill people.
Yeah. But if he had committed and had killed Superman, like if that had actually happened, that would have been the thing that broke his life and everyone would
Yeah,
have left. So that was the
completely.
importance of that moment. So him seeing that and him choosing to not take a life and to see the value again and see that moment of him coming to the brink and seeing himself completely parallel with Joe Chill and
Yeah.
feeling like, you know, seeing Superman as that helpless kid again, just
Hmm.
all of that is just so well done. And when you actually look at it and examine it like that, it makes sense. And people just don't want to put more than 30 seconds of thought into something before
Yeah,
they just write it
exactly.
off as just being bad filmmaking.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. I think it's really interesting what you said there about like that, that decision that Bruce has to make. I think as a character, Bruce has to make so many decisions that become so important to everyone around him. And I think being put into that predicament like that Zach put him into was just so perfect of his character to really, he goes to the brink, but he doesn't cross it. And
Yeah.
as a character, Bruce never would. And we
Yeah.
know that he would never cross that. And I just think it's such an interesting aspect of his character to really push forward. I don't think people were even really ready to see that he can
No,
be
not
pushed
at
to
all.
the edge, but he will never cross it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, it's
No.
just funny now people just refuse to actually pay attention to the movie they're watching to, you know?
Yeah.
Because all of it is said very blatantly in that movie. And even before, because obviously the extended cut helped a lot with a lot of the
Yes.
core aspects of that movie. But even before, when I saw it in 2016, I still understood everything the movie was saying. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
it wasn't like it was just like impossible to figure out motivation. Like,
Yeah. Yeah. No, completely. I agree. So finally, wrapping it up, somebody who hasn't seen Batman doesn't really know what's going on with it, doesn't really get who he is. Can you explain, why he's so important to you and why he's so important to, pop culture as general? Why have people clung on to Batman? Why not a different character? What makes him so special in your eyes?
well, what I think is the most important aspect of Batman, why I always have fallen onto him as being my favorite, is the way pretty much every Batman interpretation I've ever seen has really dealt with the ideas of psychological trauma and
Mm-hmm.
things like that. Not just in him, but in his rogues gallery. So you see the way trauma affects different people differently. And I think with him, it's built this kind of intense resilience to keep going and keep pushing himself because he sees himself as like the last line of you know of saving the city that robbed him of his childhood, if that makes
Yeah.
sense.
Mm-hmm.
He creates like it's kind of like a savior complex in himself in a way where he has to do this, but at the same time, the savior complex comes across in a lot of different ways with the Bat family because he sees all of them. Everyone who's part of his family in some way has come close to that same kind of loss and trauma that he
Yeah.
did, and so he wants to give them like a purpose back into their life, but
Mm-hmm.
he's so kind of battered up in his own psyche that the only way he can really communicate that level of love is to bring them into the same kind of, business that he's doing, with bringing them into this kind of crime fighting business himself. And that's the way he thinks he can show them they're loved and they're important, that their life has value. So I think that kind of aspect of seeing those bits of humanity come out of him, but come out of him in different ways that kind of make you question if it's all right, but at the same time seeing where he's coming from is what's always stuck with me, and seeing that kind of journey and that kind of mental battle he's always doing with himself every time he steps into a new storyline, a new issue, faces a new threat, is what kind of makes him a timeless character and why you can do so much with him.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I completely agree. I couldn't agree more. Everything you said was brilliant. Thank you so much for coming on.
Yeah, absolutely.
Where can they find you on Twitter?
Yeah, so my Twitter, my personal Twitter is The Real Kevin Dawson. My professional Twitter, where I advertise all my work, is Movies by Kevin. And my Instagram is, and my Twitter is Dawson for Real. My Instagram is The Real Kevin Dawson. So
that's brilliant. Thank you so much for coming on.
Yeah, absolutely. Every time.
You'll definitely be back on again.
Absolutely. Look forward to it.
Thank you so much for coming on, not once but twice. You've been amazing.
Anytime. Bring me on every day. I don't care.
And I will definitely take you up on it once YouTube gets itself together.
Perfect.
Thank you so much.